next speaker, would you please welcome Lisa Michaels.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I don't have a script. I was born and raised in Oklahoma in the center of the Bible Belt, and I asked the Lord to be my personal Savior when I was young, and He's been directing me ever since as much as possible. I haven't been good all along, but I was running for Congress in the 1st Congressional District, and I learned that we did not have a candidate to run for Attorney General. And the Lord prevailed upon me to find a candidate. And so I went searching far and wide for a conservative Christian candidate to run for Attorney General in this very important race. And we found the most brilliant, who I think is the most brilliant attorney in the entire state of Oregon, undergrad from Harvard in physics, law and MBA, earned simultaneously at Yale. And despite all that, instead of taking the road to the secular road and fighting and litigating for these big, powerful law firms, he's been fighting for individual freedoms, for the rights and the individuals of people here in Oregon. He's been taking the fight to the government. He has been a phenomenon. If you haven't heard him speak, you're in for a real treat. He's the strongest speaker in the entire country. Give it up for the amazing James Buechel.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. I am running for Attorney General. I'm running for Attorney General because I'm concerned about the rule of law. I'm concerned about our country. I'm concerned about our state, not just our state with respect to public policy, but our moral state. And I want to suggest something that we haven't heard yet today, which is sort of extemporaneous, so bear with me. But that is that we need to look within ourselves and see what it is in us that has helped bring about this state of affairs where we have this overwhelming government that has come to us and is starting to take away everything that we know and love. And I'd like to start with a reading from the Old Testament, the book of Samuel. Book of Samuel, chapter 8. And this is back from the time of the Judges, when the Israelites were out there and they didn't have a king. And they thought maybe that would be a good idea. And they went to Samuel, their prophet leader, and he said, no, that's a bad idea. God will take care of you. But they said, no, we'll have a king. And God says to Samuel, it's not your fault. They've rejected me by turning toward the king. So let me tell you what's going to happen when they get their king. And what he told them was, at great length, I'll only read the last part, he will take 1/10 of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king which ye shall have chosen. And the Lord will not hear you in that day. And nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, nay, but we will have a king over us. Now, we heard a little bit about the history of this country and of this state. And there was a time, that great revolutionary time, where the people came to this country to get religious freedom. And then they fought against the king because they knew their Bible. And in the Revolutionary War, their slogan was, we have no king but Jesus. Amen. We have no king but Jesus. And those people who were divinely inspired, half of them or more, were all preachers. They sat down and they wrote the Constitution. And the Constitution was a great and inspired document that was based on principles set forth in the Declaration of Independence. And the Declaration of Independence said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we had leaders for decades who understood this. John F. Kennedy, for all of his faults, understood this, and in his inaugural address, he said, this was a revolutionary idea. It was a new idea in the history of the world. The idea that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. And the people who are not of God, did anyone see that video of the Democratic Convention where they had a big dispute over whether to put God back in the Democratic platform? And we heard a convention of political leaders who shouted, boo, and hissed God. They are against God, and they are against the idea that God gives us rights because they want to be in charge of everything. They want everything to depend on them. It is a madness that looks for power. Now, as a lawyer, I find myself attached to this idea that rights come from God and that there are inherent limitations on government. But we are in very dark times now. We are in times where the government does not understand that it has any limitations on it at all. And that is why we can have some monstrosity like Obamacare come before the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court say, oh yes, that's just fine. There must be a health care plank in the Constitution somewhere. Can't you see it? We're the experts. We can see it. Move along. This is the way it is. These are dark times, and I want to suggest to you again, what is it that does this to us? Maybe it's that we think there ought to be a law. We think that there ought to be someone to take care of us like the government. And we turn away from God and we turn toward the government. And what we get is exactly the same thing that happened to the Israelites. It's exactly the same thing that happened to the Old English. The slogan in the Declaration of Independence, it said, King George has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out our substance. And that we have now in spades. We have the new officers. We have the new rules. But then we have people who say, well, we need a law. We need a law. I'd like to tell you about a case that for me underscored the nature of law and the nature of unalienable rights. There was a young woman back east who was dying of cancer. And she wanted to try a drug to save herself. It was a drug that was available in Europe. And she went into the federal courts and said, these federal officials will not let me try this drug to save my life. I've read the Constitution. I've read the Declaration of Independence. We have a right to life. And the federal court said, no, you have no right to life. You are essentially a cow of the government. The needs of the federal regulatory system, they supersede any particular right have to your puny little life. We have got to have a king who's in charge of which drugs here and which drugs there, so I must differ with my colleague over here. Whenever we ask the government in to protect us, the government, as Reagan said, that's big enough to give you what you want is big enough to take away everything you've got. And that's what we have now, a government that is taking away everything we've got. Now, I came to Christianity slowly, in a variety of strange ways, having in some sense to do with law. And I have a miserable time in the law because I stand up for individual rights and I go in there and over again I'm told my clients are the cows who have to do what they're told and they don't have any rights. And I see remarkable doctrines arising in law. I see a generation of judges who are not motivated by God and seem to be motivated by something else. I'll give you an example. When you go into court and you try and file a lawsuit, one of the things the government will tell you is, oh, you don't have standing. You're not the right person to sue. And so when some of these Catholic institutions have come into court to say, oh, we don't like this mandate, the court has said, well, you're not Catholic enough. You're not the right kind of institution. And we see the courts over and over again shutting their doors against citizens who want to get in and straighten things out and make people obey the law. Over and over again, you don't have standing. And they've erected doctrines that say, oh, if the government is out spending money illegally, you can't stop that. You're just a taxpayer. What do you have to say about that? But you know what? These same courts that have thrown prayer out of the schools and are trying to give us freedom from religion instead of freedom of religion, they've made up an exception to that rule. If someone dares to give 1 ounce of support to a Christian institution, why any taxpayer can walk into court and challenge that. We have special rules for those who will attack Christianity. And we see where that comes from. It comes from that same crowd in the Democratic Convention saying boo and hiss about having God anywhere near this people and its laws. I don't know where we're going. I don't know where we're going with all this. I think we're going in a dark way. And I agree with those speakers who say we've got to pray very hard about this. But we've also got to look in ourselves and say, are we asking for government here and government there? Or can we stand up and can we be in liberty by ourselves and be a free people? Because we have got to be examples, and our churches have got to be examples. What has happened to our churches? Where are they? They're not really hardly here at all. Where did they go? We have got to be examples to them. We have got to stand up against these forces or very bad things are going to happen. So I have got to go back out on the campaign trail, but I wanted to be here today to support you in your fight for God and for country and for Oregon. Thank you very much.